She is finally ready to tell the world what really happened between them. With her wedding to Jeff Bezos just around the corner, Miller has decided he's tired of staying quiet about Lauren Sánchez and the secrets he's kept for over 20 years. After decades of silence, the former NFL player is breaking his vow of secrecy about their tumultuous 4-year relationship that ended in betrayal and heartbreak. Miller's revelations promise to shed new light on Lauren Sánchez, the woman who captured the heart of one of the world's richest men. What he reveals are patterns of behavior that have remained hidden from public view until now, the beginning of everything. Long before Lauren Sánchez was making headlines as Jeff Bezos' bride-to-be, she was engaged to someone else, an NFL star, Anthony Miller. And what started as a dream romance would eventually lead him to reveal the truth he's kept for over 20 years. They met in 1996, when Miller was playing for the Denver Broncos, and Sanchez was an ambitious young sports reporter. The connection was instant, and soon they began dating. At first, it felt like a dream. He was a star athlete. She was a rising television personality. For 4 years, they shared dinners, traveled together, and cheered each other on as their careers grew. Miller admired Lauren's drive, especially as she landed high-profile roles on shows like Extra and Fox Sports News. To outsiders, they seemed like the perfect couple. But even in those early years, Miller began to notice things that didn't sit right: small habits, subtle behaviors, details that chipped away at the image he had of her. Around 2.5 years into their relationship, they got engaged. Lauren had been hinting heavily about marriage, and Miller, by his own admission, gave her the ring more out of pressure than passion. "I kind of gave her the ring because she bugged me about getting married," he later said. Looking back now, with her wedding to one of the world's richest men on the horizon, Miller believes the red flags were always there. At the time, though, everything seemed fine. They were planning a future together, unaware that the cracks were already forming beneath the surface. And as their relationship deepened, Miller began to see a side of Lauren that the public never did. The cracks began to show. Even in the midst of their picture-perfect relationship, small cracks had already started to form, signs that Anthony Miller now says he wishes he'd paid more attention too long before Lauren Sánchez became engaged to Jeff Bezos. At first, it was nothing major, just little things that didn't sit right. But over time, those little things added up. One of the first red flags was Lauren's attitude toward money. Despite earning a solid income from her growing TV career, Miller noticed she rarely spent her own. She was very frugal, really kind of cheap, Miller would later say. She wanted me to pay for everything. Then there were the inconsistencies, how different Lauren seemed depending on whether she was with him or away. "She was a good person to have around when she was with you," Miller explained. "If you needed a massage or something to eat or anything, she'd be there for you, helpful, generous. But when she wasn't with him, something always felt off." Lauren's work trips, social events, and long hours gradually triggered a gnawing sense of doubt. Miller couldn't explain it at first, but his instincts told him something was wrong. He wanted to trust her, but the unease kept growing. He started questioning her stories. Things didn't always line up. Sometimes she seemed distracted. Sometimes she guarded her phone more than usual. Sometimes, when he asked simple questions where she'd been, who she'd seen, she'd dodge the topic or change the subject entirely. Miller tried to convince himself it was all in his head. After all, Lauren was beautiful and successful, and they seemed happy when they were together. Maybe he was just being paranoid. Maybe all couples went through times when they wondered about each other. Maybe this was just normal relationship stuff. Maybe his doubts said more about him than about her. But deep down, the trust was starting to erode. And when trust begins to unravel, even love can't always hold things together. The worst part was that Miller really did love Lauren. He wanted their relationship to work, and he wanted to believe that everything was fine and that they could have a happy future together. But as he now admits, the woman he had fallen for, the ambitious young reporter he'd met back in '96, was starting to feel like someone else entirely. Unfortunately, Miller was about to discover that his gut feelings were right all along. The discovery that changed everything. After being together for 4 years and engaged for 1.5 of those years, Miller was about to find out the truth about Lauren Sánchez. Everything he feared, everything he had pushed aside came crashing into reality with a single accidental discovery. And decades later, as Lauren Sánchez prepares to marry Jeff Bezos, it's this moment he can't forget. It wasn't through a conversation or an argument. It wasn't because Lauren confessed or because someone told him directly. It happened when Miller found Lauren's diary. Now, finding someone's diary isn't something you plan to do. Miller wasn't snooping around trying to catch Lauren in a lie. It was one of those moments that just happens when two people share a home. He stumbled upon the diary, opened it, and within moments, everything he thought he knew about their relationship was gone. The words on those pages told a story that was completely different from the life he thought he was living with Lauren Sánchez. What he read confirmed his worst suspicions. Lauren had been unfaithful. The diary revealed that Lauren had been cheating on him not just once or twice, but multiple times with different guys. I found out when I looked in her diary, Miller would later explain. Reading those words was like getting punched in the stomach. All those times when Miller had wondered if something was wrong, all those moments when his gut told him Lauren wasn't being honest, he had been right all along. But it didn't end there. After the breakup, more stories surfaced, friends told him things they hadn't said before. Pieces he hadn't been able to place now made a painful kind of sense. I found out more after I broke up with her, he said. More than I ever wanted to know. The truth was worse than anything he'd imagined. Finally, Miller had enough. His frustration and heartbreak boiled over as he admitted to a close friend, "I'm tired of the lies." He couldn't hold the truth in any longer. The secrets, the betrayal, the deceit, all of it needed to come out. Miller realized that while he had been planning their future together, while he had been thinking about marriage and building a life with, Lauren Sánchez had been living a completely different life behind his back. She had been meeting with other men, having relationships with other people, and lying to Miller's face about where she was and what she was doing. The betrayal cut deep. Miller had given Lauren 4 years of his life. He had loved her, supported her career, and even proposed to her because she wanted to get married. And the whole time, she'd been cheating on him with multiple people. Looking back, Miller could see all the signs he had missed or ignored, those times when Lauren seemed distracted or secretive, those moments when her stories didn't quite add up. All of it made sense now, but understanding it didn't make the pain any less. Miller also realized that Lauren was really good at hiding her true self. She could be sweet and loving when she was with him, making him feel like everything was perfect, but when she was away from him, she was living a completely different life. The discovery explained so much about their relationship. It explained why Miller never felt like he could completely trust Lauren, even when he wanted to. It explained why something always felt a little bit off, even during their happiest moments. Together, his instincts had been trying to tell him the truth, but he had ignored them because he loved her. For years, kept this to himself. But as Lauren Sánchez steps into the global spotlight with a new fiancé and a new narrative, Miller has chosen to speak, not for revenge, but to finally tell the truth. It's the final insult. The end of a relationship is rarely clean. But for Anthony Miller, the betrayal he discovered in Lauren Sánchez's diary wasn't the final blow. It was what happened afterward that still lingers. After 4 years together and a broken engagement, most people would return the ring, but Lauren didn't. Despite the cheating, despite the lies, despite everything that had come to light, she kept it. For Miller, it wasn't about the money. The ring represented a promise, a commitment he made believing they had a future. Holding onto it, especially under the circumstances, felt like a final act of disrespect. Miller had already paid for everything during their relationship. He had covered the costs of their dates, trips, and life together because Lauren never wanted to spend her own money. Lauren, he said, had always expected that. Now, even in the breakup, she seemed to walk away with something more. It was never just about the ring. It was what it symbolized. A future she had never really been honest about. And a version of herself that no longer matched the reality Miller had come to know. Still, he tried to move on. Buried the hatchet with Sanchez and was cool with how things ended, he would say later. But the truth is, some things never fully leave you, especially when the person who hurt you is suddenly back in the spotlight. this time engaged to one of the most powerful men in the world. And with that headline came something Miller couldn't ignore, a pattern repeating itself once again. Lauren was being celebrated publicly, while the private truths he believed were being quietly forgotten. Now, with her wedding to Jeff Bezos drawing closer, the ring may be long gone. But the memory of what it stood for and how it was kept still speaks volumes. Lauren's new life and old patterns after her relationship with Miller ended. Lauren Sánchez didn't stay single for long. She moved on to dating Tony Gonzalez, another NFL player, and they even had a child with him. But that relationship ended too. In 2001, then she got engaged to actor Henry Simmons in 2003, but that too fell apart. Finally, in 2005, Lauren married Patrick Whitesell, a powerful talent agent who worked with some of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Patrick was successful, wealthy, and well-connected in the entertainment industry. Lauren and Patrick had 2 children and built a glamorous life together. From the outside, Lauren's marriage to Patrick looked perfect. They attended fancy Hollywood parties, lived in beautiful homes, and seemed to have everything anyone could want. Lauren was still working in television, and Patrick was one of the most powerful agents in the business. They were a power couple in Hollywood. But from Anthony Miller's perspective, there was something familiar about the pattern. Once again, Lauren had found a successful, wealthy man to take care of her. Once again, she appeared to be living a picture-perfect life. But Miller, watching from a distance, couldn't help but wonder whether the woman he once knew, the one who cheated, who lied, who kept his engagement ring, had really changed at all. He didn't speak publicly. He had moved on, and he wasn't looking for attention. But he never forgot. She wanted someone who could take care of her, Miller said later. And once she found that, she stayed until she didn't. For 14 years, Lauren and Patrick seemed happy together. They raised their children, built successful careers, and appeared to be one of Hollywood's stable couples. But then, in 2019, everything changed. News broke that shocked the entertainment world and reminded Miller of everything he had experienced. With Lauren Sánchez years before, she had been having an affair. This time, though, the stakes were much higher, and so was the profile of the man involved. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon and one of the wealthiest people in the world, is the reason behind the split. The affair had been going on while both Lauren and Jeff were still married to other people. Lauren was married to Patrick, and Jeff was married to his wife, Mackenzie. When the affair became public, both marriages ended in divorce. Miller read the news with a mix of surprise and recognition. Lauren Sánchez was cheating again. It's just like she had cheated on him over 20 years earlier. The successful TV reporter who had seemed so perfect on the outside was still the same person who couldn't stay faithful to the one man in her life. But this time was different. This time, Lauren's affair was front-page news around the world. Jeff Bezos wasn't just any man. He was one of the most famous and powerful people on the planet. When their relationship became public, it created a media storm that followed Lauren everywhere she went. As Lauren's new life with Bezos unfolded on magazine covers and celebrity blogs, Miller stayed silent but not indifferent. With the wedding approaching, he began to wonder if the patterns hadn't changed. Did the man preparing to marry her really know the whole story? The leaked messages and family betrayal in January 2019? The world learned about Lauren Sánchez and Jeff Bezos in the most shocking way possible. The National Enquirer, a famous newspaper, published private text, messages and photos that not only exposed Lauren and Jeff's affair, but also just how far betrayal could reach. The leaked messages included romantic notes from Jeff to Lauren, with him saying things like, "I want to smell you, I want to breathe you in, I want to hold you tight." There were also very personal and private photos of Jeff. The messages were raw, romantic, and unmistakably real. Suddenly, what had only been whispered about in Hollywood became front-page news. But what shocked the world even more was the source. The messages weren't hacked. They weren't stolen by strangers. They were handed over by Lauren's own brother, Michael Sanchez. According to investigators, Michael had sold his sister's private messages to the National Enquirer. $200,000? He had been trusted with that information, possibly even confided. Yet he turned it into a tabloid deal. This betrayal was painful because it came from family. Lauren trusted her brother with information about her relationship with Jeff Bezos. And Michael used that trust to make money from a scandal. It wasn't just about the money, though. The leak caused huge problems for both Lauren and Jeff. Miller watched this drama unfold with interest. He remembered how Lauren had cheated on him, and now he was seeing her private life exposed to the world because of her own brother's betrayal. There was something fitting about it all. Lauren, who had been dishonest in her relationships, was now having her dishonesty exposed for everyone to see. However, Miller also felt bad for Lauren in some ways. Nobody deserves to have their private messages published for the whole world to read, even someone who had hurt him the way Lauren had. And being betrayed by your own brother had to be incredibly painful. Jeff Bezos was furious about the leak. He hired investigators to find out exactly how the National Enquirer had gotten his private messages. He even wrote a public letter accusing the tabloid of trying to blackmail him with the embarrassing photos. The whole situation became a huge scandal that involved not just Lauren and Jeff, but also lawyers, investigators, and even politicians. Michael Sanchez found himself in the middle of a legal mess, facing lawsuits and public criticism for betraying his sister's trust. As Miller watched the chaos unfold, he stayed quiet. He had kept his own story hidden for 2 decades. But with Lauren's wedding on the horizon and her image being reshaped in the media, he started to wonder if it was finally time to speak. Not to add fuel to the fire, but to offer the one thing that had been missing from all the headlines. Context. Miller's growing frustration had been building for over 20 years. Anthony Miller had kept his mouth shut about Lauren Sánchez. Even though she had cheated on him, kept his engagement ring, and hurt him deeply, Miller had stayed quiet. He had moved on with his life and let Lauren live hers without interference. But watching Lauren's relationship with Jeff Bezos unfold in the spotlight brought everything rushing back. There she was, again in red carpets, in private jets, on magazine covers, smiling, glamorous, framed as a woman in love. The world was celebrating their relationship as a modern-day power couple, but Miller couldn't forget how it all began with secrecy, with cheating, and with the same patterns he had lived through himself. What bothered Miller was seeing Lauren portrayed in the media as a victim or innocent party. Some news stories talked about her like she was just a woman who had fallen in love, ignoring the fact that she had been married to someone else when she started her affair with Jeff. Other stories focused on the dramatic aspects of her relationship with Jeff without mentioning her history of similar behavior. Miller knew the real Lauren Sánchez. He knew what she was capable of when it came to relationships and honesty. He had lived through her cheating and her lies. He had seen how she could be sweet and loving to your face while betraying you behind your back. As Lauren and Jeff's relationship became more serious in public, Miller's frustration grew. They were attending fancy parties together, traveling around the world, and acting like their relationship was a beautiful love story. But Miller knew that their relationship had started with betrayal and dishonesty, true to Lauren's relationship. Patterns from the past. When news broke that Lauren and Jeff were planning to get married, Miller's frustrations reached a breaking point. Here was Lauren, about to marry one of the richest men in the world. Perhaps Jeff Bezos had no idea what he was really getting into. Miller had stayed silent when it happened to him. But now, with a wedding approaching and a new version of the story being sold to the public, he began to feel a responsibility out of revenge. But out of honesty, the decision to speak up wasn't easy. Miller knew that talking about Lauren would bring attention to his own life and might create drama that he had avoided for decades. But the idea of staying quiet, of letting the same cycle repeat, felt even worse. So, after years of silence, he made a decision. He would share his story, not to hurt Lauren, but to finally tell the truth about what had happened between them and what that truth might still mean. The truth finally comes out at 53 years old. Anthony Miller had carried the weight of his silence for over 2 decades. But with Lauren Sánchez preparing to marry Jeff Bezos and the public story of her life growing glossier by the day, he decided it was time to say what he'd held back for far too long. I couldn't really trust her," Miller finally said in an interview. These 6 words summed up everything he had felt during their 4-year relationship. "She gets around. She was cheating on me with other guys." They weren't the words of a bitter ex, just a man recounting the truth of what he experienced. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. After 4 years in a relationship marked by doubt, secrecy, and quiet heartbreak, Miller was no longer interested in protecting the illusion. He described how the cracks started small, how the woman who could be warm and attentive in person seemed to vanish into another life when she wasn't by his side. "She was a good person to have around when she was with you," he said. "But if she was away from you, I didn't trust her." He spoke about the diary, the moment that confirmed everything. How it revealed not just a mistake, but a pattern. How the cheating had been frequent, not accidental. And how even. After the relationship ended, more stories came out, painting a fuller, more painful picture. "I found out when I looked in her diary, and I found out more after I broke up with her," Miller explained. "And then there was the ring, the one she insisted on keeping even after the betrayal." To Miller, that symbolized everything. How she had taken something that represented love and held on to it despite what it had come to mean. Telling his story wasn't about settling scores. It was about finally speaking from experience while the world was still watching. "I stayed quiet for a long time," Miller said. "But with this wedding coming up, people deserve to know who she really is." His voice may not make headlines like hers, but his words cut through the glamour and gave a different kind of perspective. It's not on Lauren Sánchez, the celebrity fiancé, but on the person behind the image, and with her wedding just days away. Miller's voice finally cuts through the noise. Not to stop her, but to make sure someone's finally telling the whole truth. What do you think about Miller's decision to speak up after all these years? Do you think Jeff Bezos knows all the details about Lauren's past? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the secrets behind celebrity relationships.